Hello, everyone, and welcome to Community Forum. Today, I am having the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Adam Dawkins, previously of Stoughton. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hello, Sandra. Good to be back. Good to see you.
It's nice to have you. So excited. I don't think I've seen you since you left Stoughton to head down to Tennessee to do your I think you're wrapping up your third year, but your 3 years in seminary, which is super excited, even though we were very sad to see you leave. You were our town moderator for a short while, which was extremely exciting because there were so many new members that had joined our town government at the time. So I'm just really happy to have you here today. So what I wanted to do is just ask you to kind of give us some, an update on how things are going since you've left us here in Stoughton and gone to Tennessee.
Yeah, so I'm actually wrapping up my second year. It feels like I've been gone much longer, actually, but we've only been gone for 2 years from Stoughton. And we were just back actually last week in Stoughton. We were back sadly for the funeral of our dear friend Mickey Walls, who was a member of my discernment committee at Trinity Episcopal Church on Sumner Street, and has been a dear friend to Adam and me for many years, and we loved her very much. And we were sorry to return, but we were glad to be able to go back and celebrate her remarkable life and be with her husband Boyd and all of our friends and family at Trinity Church for that while we celebrated Mickey. But, it really was Trinity Church and the people of Stoughton that sent me on to this time in my life. I mean, it's the way it happens in the Episcopal Church is you get sort of raised up for ministry. You identify yourself as somebody who is interested in the possibility of ordained ministry. And I sort of said at one point, gee, I think maybe I might hear that call in my life. And they pulled together a discernment committee that was chaired by Bonnie Hickey of Stoughton and had a lot of other Stoughton residents and as I mentioned, Mickey Walls, the late Mickey Walls, and they identified that in fact they sensed that call too, and then sent me on to the Diocese of Massachusetts, who agreed that I had a call, and then that resulted in my departing for seminary, which has been in Sewanee, Tennessee, a very small place, about the size of Avon. When all the students are actually in session, so it takes all the students to get it to the size of Avon. So I'm entering now my third of 3 years at the seminary there at the University of the South School of Theology. So it has been quite a ride since I left Stoughton, and even though it is always good for my soul to come home and to see dear friends and loved ones back in Stoughton and to be in those familiar places again, it was wonderful to be back.
So I had mentioned earlier, you're now going into your final year of seminary. Do you think you'll ever end up back in Stoughton after it's all done?
One can never say. I belong to the Diocese of Massachusetts, and so I'm being ordained to the priesthood for the God willing and the people consenting, as we say. For the Diocese of Massachusetts, but ultimately I go where the church has needs. And we are very hopeful of returning to Massachusetts, but the diocese is the entire eastern part of the state. It's sort of, Framingham to Edgartown and Amesbury to Attleboro. So it's a big swath and about 50 more than 150 churches in the Episcopal Diocese of Massachusetts. So if we come home, which we very much hope to do, it really can be anywhere. So, if it makes sense to live in Stoughton again, we will absolutely move home. We would love to do that. But we'll just have to see what makes sense when we sort of have those conversations with the bishop later this year.
Well, that would be a nice treat if you guys came back. I miss you guys. I think a lot of people do.
we miss you all more than you know.
I have to ask, when you were here, did you go to Amelia's?
Of course I went to Amelia's.
I knew it.
I still have a locker at Amelia's, although I don't have the key to it right now.
Oh no!
I got hijacked by our dear friend Deb Sauvanet, who currently has my key. But I was able to retrieve my key from her for long enough to have a nice meal at Amelia's again. So.
Oh, that's nice. I know that's like your favorite place. That's fantastic. Oh, that's nice. Oh, so obviously you were here for not so great, not so great time and, an unfortunate incident, but it's nice to see you here, and I'm sure you'll be back soon because you've been here a couple times since you left, which tells us that Stoughton's in your heart. Yeah. So this is something that's a total, not, little random question, but I always wonder this every time, like we are texting or chat and catch up. Like in terms of all the different states that you guys have lived in towns, where's Stoughton in that spot?
So I'm still active on Stoughton Enthusiasts. I'm still one of the administrators of that page, which I founded back in 2015 or so. That now has close to 6,000 members. I talk this big game of Stoughton being home. Stoughton will truly, and this is no joke. Stoughton will always be our home. Stoughton is where I feel like I kind of grew up in some ways. Stoughton is a place that really set me on this journey. So even if it's not in the cards that we return there to live, it will always be home. So every time I come back, it really is a homecoming. And it's pretty impossible for me to overstate the affection that I feel for that place and for all the people who live there. They were very, very happy years for Adam and me when we lived in Stoughton. So it'll always be our home.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys had a beautiful home, and hearing your story more in depth, I'm sure folks are, kind of saying, wow, the impact that Stoughton had in your life and helping, like you came here, you guys grew roots. And then as you, were at Trinity and, engaged and realizing that what your calling was, and having folks of Stoughton kind of embrace you and help you get to, the decisioning and sponsoring where you are. I think that's amazing. And that's something that's always going to be ingrained. So.
Yeah, I mean, that is probably the hardest part of the whole process to be ordained, is that it does require you to, many times, certainly in our tradition, it requires you to kind of pluck up and detach from your roots and be sent off into kind of some unknowns. And we had a really rich and full and happy life in Stoughton that was surrounded by people that we loved, and our community and our church, and certainly the town government, and even town meeting is something of a community, if you can believe it. and all those things were so very important to us. But this call sort of was there, and we couldn't deny that. So it was Stoughton who that brought us in and loved us, and we loved you back, and then you kind of sent us forward into this time in our lives. And so it's very special to us.
And speaking of sending you forward, Tennessee, which is a wonderful place. My sister lives in Tennessee, in Knoxville. So you went down to Sewanee, and it seemed that you guys assimilated very well down there. You met a lot of great people. How was that experience when you had left this place where you were part of town government, running a popular Stoughton enthusiast group, all these things, and then you shifted to Tennessee? How was that transition? And
well, when we first got there, Adam and I arrived at Sewanee in July, and my classes didn't actually begin until late August. And most of my classmates didn't arrive in Sewanee until much later in the summer as well. So we had about 6 weeks by ourselves in this place where we knew literally nobody. And although actually my former boss from Trinity Church in Boston, when I used to work there, the previous rector that hired me at Trinity Church actually is retired to Sewanee, so it was good to see him and his wife. But that was the only ones that we knew, and one does not go socializing with one's former boss on a regular basis, and so we saw them a couple times. But other than that, it was just the two of us on our own. So it was a really, really lonely transition for us. We missed the heck out of everybody. We missed our friends. We missed everything about being in town, and then sort of suddenly we knew nobody. But that all changed very quickly after classes began and orientation got underway and stuff, and got to know my classmates. And I'm really tight with my classmates. They come from all over the country, there's about 18 of us in my class, and we're all a really, really tightly knit group. And we've all sort of spread to the winds over the summer here, like myself. But yeah, it was a difficult transition. And the second year of seminary, what we call our middler year, we have what's called a middle review, where you sit down with some members of the faculty, and they kind of let you know what their impression is of you, and it's a canonical process in the church that they report back to my bishop to say, Adam's doing great. Adam could improve in these areas. Adam is, whatever. My my review went well, thank God. But anyway, one of the things that they said was they said, so, you had a really rich life in the place that you came from, and you were an elected official, and you had a great job, and you had a wonderful home and lots of friends and stuff, and then you come here and be a student and give all that up. What's that been like for you? And I'm like, well, gee, now that you put it in those terms, I mean,
right.
But really and truly, seminary has been terrific, yeah, it's just been a change.
So another point, that you were working full time for the University of the South Sewanee, where you were a student in the School of Theology. Can you just fill us in a little more about that?
So actually, it's the other Adam who's working for the university. He works full time for them. I'm a full time student.
Oh, so it's your Adam.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, the other Adam, my spouse, yes, he works for the advancement office at the university at Sewanee, which was very much in line of what he was doing. He did that work for Boston Medical Center most recently before we left Massachusetts. And so he continued that work at the university, and he coordinates major university events, and also coordinates the board of trustees at the university. And so he is very much in the thick of things. I'm just a student. I mean, I don't know half of what's happening around there like he does. I mean, he's kind of, somebody wants to describe me as Mr. Stoughton. Well, Adam's Mr. Sewanee, as it turns out. So,
oh, I can imagine that he is.
I've got my nose in books all the time, and other matters and stuff, and he's kind of the guy who's involved in all of what's happening around Sewanee and keeping things running there.
Oh,
so,
okay. Sorry. Yeah, I
right.
jotted all this down super quick before.
It's not always easy to, is that always easy to tell us apart when you're married to somebody with the same first name and the same haircut?
Oh, you crack me up, Adam. Oh, so that's good. So it's nice to hear that he's doing well too, especially when you talked about the transition for the both of you and how it was lonely at first, and everything that you guys kind of gave up because he had a career in Boston as well. So that's wonderful. And I don't know, I miss both of you significantly, and it was definitely a fun time when you guys were here. So it's nice to get an update on him. So if you want to give us a little bit of an update on the process of ordination. I know that you talked about like your time and where you are and what you're doing, but now that you're coming into your last year, and I know that you stated that you'll be part of the diocese, so it's one of the churches they will send you to where their need is. So with you being down in Tennessee, and now where you are today, which we'll get into in a few minutes, which you're in British Columbia, Vancouver, was this a planned shift for you, or was this a last minute? Like during seminary, did they say, we now see that there's some things going on in Canada that we would like to move you, have you go there for a few weeks to a month to kind of learn and start to work on that? Like, how do they make those decisions? How does that process work?
So first of all, I consult on several times a year. I communicate with my bishop back in Boston, and kind of let him know how things are going, and that's part of this process, or here in Canada, process, as they would say. But it is part of this. It is part of the process for me to be in regular contact with my bishop to kind of let him know what's up. Last year, actually before the pandemic, I applied for a grant from a church organization that's basically it's a missionary organization that funds seminarians for some creative work, and we put together a proposal and say, I'd really like to do this work, and it's important to me for this reason, and I propose that I do this, and I'm asking you for funding to make it work. And that's why I'm now here in British Columbia. Actually, is this is the response to a grant proposal that I put together in consultation with my bishop and with others in the diocese to explore the work of working toward Indigenous justice ministries here in British Columbia at a really what's turned out to be a quite a significant time in that journey here in this place, which I think has a lot to teach me about how it is we work with at-risk and historically oppressed communities in the United States, and here in Canada. You know, the Anglican Diocese of New Westminster, which is which is part of the Anglican Church of Canada, which is a sister church of the Episcopal Church, has graciously taken me on for the next 4 or 5 weeks here in Vancouver as an intern in their office for Indigenous Justice Ministries to work with different communities here in this place to learn about what it looks like to reconcile, or in some cases to reconcile, the relationship between Indigenous peoples and Anglican people, and particularly Anglo people who have been historic oppressors. And so, and that has really taken shape recently as during the discovery of the countless number of bodies of children buried secretly and quietly around Indian residential schools around British Columbia and much of Canada. There have been discoveries that I'm certain that most people in Stoughton have seen on the news recently, here in British Columbia and most recently in Saskatchewan. It's well into the number of thousands of bodies. These are all things that Indigenous communities all have known all along, and now we have the hard evidence to back that up. You know, suddenly now it's in the news, because even though Indigenous peoples here have known this, now suddenly it's real, and it's getting the attention that it absolutely deserves, because crimes have been committed and injustices have been committed, and much of this was done at the hands of the church, because these are schools that were established by Christian denominations. So as a white man, and as a member of a church that has historically that has historically had a hand in colonization, even here in Canada, I've come to understand what my role is in restoring justice and to bring about healing, because that's one of the most important things that we do as priests and as Christian people, is to try to bring healing and to restore justice.
Yeah. That's tough, and that's you know, it's I first of all, I didn't know that you had done the grant through the missionary organization, and I think that, I guess, God kind of made it all happen and made it at a time where, right?
Yeah.
Needed, and it is on the news, and I've seen it on the news, and it's terrible. It's really extremely sad, and again, I think that's God's work by right, making your grant happen, and there you are. And I can't imagine, but this is, I guess, part of the commitment that you made as well, right? When you decided to go into seminary, you knew that while there'll be beautiful moments, wonderful moments with families and children and humans alike, but also there'll also be these times where you're there to support, listen. I heard you say listen like a lot, listen, learn, and just listening is key for a lot of people that are, you know, churchgoers or religious folks. We turn to certain people to help guide us and, you know, keep our minds, you know, where they need to be, which it's a lot for you. So I give you kudos for not only going into this and doing the grant, which is amazing that that's where you were forward thinking, even when you were doing that. But this is a lot mentally, I'm sure, for you as well. So obviously we all hope that you're doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have not come here with any answers. I've not come here looking to sort of offer my opinion on anything necessarily. I've come here to listen and to learn. The Indigenous communities of this place will form me far more than I will ever form them. They have much to teach me, and I just want to know how I can be an agent of healing in all of this, is what I want to know. And what are my responsibilities in all of this as a church leader? Because the pain is real, and the pain is largely at the hand of the church. So I just need to know how I can be part of restoring justice.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that brings us to another part, which is last year during the pandemic. I guess honestly, 2 years in, right? you're on your final year, who would have thunk that you went to Tennessee, went into this, and then a pandemic happens, right?
Right.
It's, so you're getting like kind of all of it in one. So, you were a chaplain at a large hospital and hospice. I think it was like in Chattanooga, correct? And so that's another really hard experience and a thing to go through. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you learned?
Sure. So most of us in the seminary, as part of our formation process during your first full summer in the seminary, you do what's called clinical pastoral education, or we call it CPE, and that's a really, really intense, often most of the time done over a summer, intense sort of 10, 11 weeks of hospital chaplaincy, and sometimes hospice chaplaincy like I did. And when I, again, having done this work in the midst of a pandemic, was most unexpected, but also probably one of the most formative things I will have ever done. Because being in hospitals and being surrounded by COVID deaths and COVID illnesses, and in addition to all the other illnesses that people come in with, but now suddenly there's all this, and there's also the problem that visitors weren't allowed in the hospitals last summer, and so the work of chaplains became so very important because we were walking with people hand in hand during some of their darkest moments and some of their scariest moments when their families couldn't be with them. So it was certainly one of the most formative things that I will ever have experienced. But I'm also really, really grateful that I had the chance to be in that environment during all of this, because I imagine it will shape my sense of what it means to be a servant pastor for the rest of my life. So I don't mind sharing with you all that there were times last summer that that I would have loved nothing more than just to have been home back in Stoughton, because I was I was all gowned up in all my PPE and my mask and my goggles and the gown and the boots and the gloves and the mask and all of that business in hospitals. And there were people actively dying of COVID, and they couldn't have their families with them. And oftentimes when people drew their last breaths, there was me gowned up in all of that outfit and two nurses gowned up in all of their outfit who were cutting off machines. And I've got my hands laying on somebody's head as they're drawing their final breaths, and I'm reading them their last rites. And their families are looking on Zoom or on FaceTime. And that happened dozens of times last summer. And gosh, if that doesn't humble you, nothing will. That's when ministry felt really real, and the work of chaplains became really, really important. So so in addition to being chaplain during at a children's hospital and all of that, and chaplain in what's the seventh largest hospital system in the country, which whoever knew that was in Chattanooga, it was really quite a time that I will never forget. So it was. It was rough. I don't mind saying it was rough, but I wouldn't take anything in the world for it.
Yeah, definitely rough for everyone. I can't imagine for you, just even hearing your story. Can't imagine, but I guess, again, right, God put you in that spot at that time, right? If that's the first summer or seminary and you do that 10 to 12 week, I think you said, right?
Yeah.
Put you in that spot. So I think this is your calling. Obviously, you know what you're calling, but it's amazing that with the path that you were in, how everything fell into place. And now you are where you are today, which is amazing. Again, while we want you back in Stoughton, I think it's amazing that you're doing all this great work in all the locations that you've been traveling and all the things that you've been doing. Is more specifically in Vancouver, because it is such a big deal, not only for the church, but for our country to recognize and understand what's really happened. So
right.
I would thank you for that. And, for taking on the selfless role of entering into this. I think it's a pretty big deal, a pretty amazing thing. I say that often about certain things. I say I could never be a teacher, right? Like, while I love my kids, I don't think I could do that job. That takes a special certain type of person. And I think you're a special certain type of person. And I'm sure that you touched many, many lives last year, whether it was via Zoom or while, they were laying in that bed, or even in a hospital, because I'm sure you were there to comfort a lot of the workers that were, dealing with things.
Yeah, and I just want to say, after the stuff that I saw last summer, and after the pain and the death and the sickness and just the grief that came at the hands of this awful pandemic they were in the midst of. If you have not been vaccinated, go get vaccinated, please. I've seen it. I'm telling you, it's real. Go get your vaccination. Yeah. And Tennessee is a part of the country that unfortunately has not been great about that. I wish some of my neighbors there in Tennessee could have could understand just the gravity of this situation.
Well, Adam, it's time for us to kind of take this out of this. This is a very, honest, true, real discussion. But now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to ask to play a little game. We have like about a minute left of this show. So I'm going to ask you a question and then ask for you to give a quick answer. And I'll try to get through as many. I have 10, but we'll see where we get to. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Honest and quick. Now, it goes after one of my favorite movies, which is, a song that's in The Sound of Music, some of our favorite things. So I'm going to ask, what's your favorite color? Blue. What's your favorite band or music artist?
Oh, gosh. Pink Floyd.
Okay, respect that. What's your favorite? I wrote this. What's your favorite place to live or visit?
Oh, Stoughton.
Okay.
Wow.
No. What's your favorite book or series?
I'm currently rereading a book right now, a great classic by Thomas Wolfe called "You Can't Go Home Again."
Great. And one last question because we're running out of time. What is your favorite TV show or series?
I've been really into The Crown recently.
No, very good one. That's an awesome one. Adam, thank you. You're a sport for playing that. I wish we had more time to go through some more of those. But I would like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for doing this interview. And I would also like to thank Roy Cohen and SMAC for letting us have this interview today. So thank you everyone for watching. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.